got some breaking news from our Home and Security editor, Mark White. More migrant boats are expected to begin landing again on the island of Lampedusa from tomorrow. Strong winds were preventing crossings. Let's find out what's going on. Mark, can you bring us the very latest from Lampedusa, where you are?
Yeah, well-placed source telling us that more migrant boats are expected to arrive in Lampedusa from tomorrow. Really the last migrant boats that made it to this Italian island, the closest Italian island to Tunisia, was on Thursday of last week, when 75 people arrived in a boat, and then the winds picked up, and really for the past now more than a week, the winds have been blowing across this stretch of the Mediterranean, making it impassable. That's given the authorities time actually to clear the decks, to get reinforcements in the way of extra police officers from around Italy, also Red Cross volunteers arriving on the island, and the last of those 11,000 migrants who arrived here in a 5-day period just the week before last have now left the island. They left on Wednesday evening. 101 of those migrants, mainly from sub-Saharan Africa. So the decks have been cleared. They are as prepared as they can be, and it will just depend on what we see. If we see a surge, as we saw in recent days and weeks, then it will overwhelm this island again. The hope is that, it is of a magnitude significantly less than that, and that the authorities are able to cope with them. But, as I say, the breaking news that we've been given from well-placed sources is that the first of those boats are expected to arrive on this island on Friday.
Mark, huge story here, as you know, the appalling fatal stabbing of a 15-year-old schoolgirl in her school uniform. We talked on GB News earlier to Richard Holden, a government minister, who says he absolutely supports more widespread use of stop and search. Just clarify for us what the position is. Is it down to chief constables in individual police authority areas whether they use more stop and search or not?
Yes, to an extent. I mean, of course, it comes down really from on high, what the government and the Home Secretary say is acceptable levels of stop and search as well. You'll remember, Andrew, that in the reign of Theresa May as Home Secretary, there was a real sort of cooling off period when it came to stop and search. And I spoke to many police contacts in that period who said that there was a significant rise in knife crime that they put down to their inability to be out there proactively on the streets, stopping these predominantly young men carrying weapons in London boroughs in particular. And they say, it's difficult to quantify just the difference that they make, but when they're out there in force, they're proactively stopping people. People know that there's a good chance that they're likely to be stopped by police, so they don't carry, or at least they hide their weapons away, usually in a local park that they can go and get. It's a difficult problem. It's been a problem for many years. It's particularly significant at the moment because we've had 15 teenage murders this year alone. We have had 45,000 knife-related offences in the year to March last year. Now, that ranges from those being stopped carrying knives to those assaulting or threatening people with knives, but it's unacceptably high. It's an increase on the previous year. And really what's required, I think, at the end of the day is a cultural change. You can only do so much in policing and proactive policing, but you need to convince communities that carrying knives is not the way forward, and that in doing that you're more liable to get into the kind of trouble that might result in you being stabbed yourself.
Mark, it's interesting words you used there, cultural and communities. I mean, I think we know what you're saying is this is a particular issue in the black community in some of our inner cities with the gang culture, and for some reason we've got to somehow get it into these young men's head. It's not clever, it's not cool to go out of the house in the morning on your way to school with a 12-inch blade in your bag.
No, that's absolutely true. And yes, there is a problem in black communities in London, but that's not to say that there's not a problem in white communities in Newcastle or, in Carlisle or wherever you might go. It just happens to be the demographics of inner city London and a lot of boroughs is made up of a larger proportion of young black males, and there is no doubt a culture amongst many there to carry weapons for bravado, for protection, whatever it might be. But of course it always gets sucked into a racial issue with stop and search. You stop young people that might be carrying knives in London and immediately it's a racial issue. You're targeting young black men. But, as I say, if you go further north in the UK to other cities, you will see that predominantly in Newcastle or in Durham or across in Cardiff, they're predominantly stopping young white men.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. Mark White there in Lampedusa, bringing us up to date on the migrant crisis and also the fatal stabbing of a 15-year-old
I wonder how many of
girl.
those extra migrants who are going to pour into Lampedusa will then set off for Britain.
I don't know, but I imagine quite a lot of them would like to as
Sure
an
they would.
end destination. But we'll find out in due course.